Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 minutes of honest advice, tips and resources. I'm Trudy J, and I'm here all on my own. Well, not completely on my own, but with none of the other Spa Girls today because of technical issues. But I do have, instead of the Spa Girls, the delightful, the wonderful Keri Arthur. Hello. Thanks for joining me here today in the spa. I'm sorry the others aren't here. We did try. we did, but we didn't quite get there. So what I'm going to do, Keri, is read out your bio and then we'll get straight into the questions. Cool. So here we go. Keri Arthur is the New York Times best-selling author of urban fantasy and paranormal romance novels. She began writing at the age of 12 and has more than 48 novels to date. Her books have received many nominations and prizes, including nods from the Romantic Times Reviewers' Choice Awards and P&R's Pearl Awards, and she has won RT's Career Achievement Award for Urban Fantasy. She currently lives in Melbourne, Australia, with her daughter. That all correct? And a dog? How many dogs? One dog? What sort of dog?
One dog. He's a Wolfhound Mastiff cross.
Yes, I saw some photos. He's a big hairy thing, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he is.
Yeah, that's my technical description of dogs for you. Big hairy dog that you've got. He looks lovely, by the way. I am not being mean about your dogs. So could you just give us a bit of it? That was the bio version of your writing career, but can you just tell us how you got into writing and how long you've been doing it and that kind of thing?
Yep. Well, I have been writing since I was 12 years old, but it wasn't until about 1990 that I got serious about it and decided I'm going to get published. It took 10 years to get published, and my first book, Dancing with the Devil, was published with a small US e-press, and I had, I think, 13 or 14 books published with them. And then I wrote the Riley Jenson series and got a traditional deal, and things took off, and I've been writing ever since. Been lucky enough to support myself writing too, and my family.
Yeah.
So I've been really lucky in my career.
That's awesome. Yeah. So and so that was your big traditional deal with the Riley Jenson series. Now you're now doing self-publishing. So when did that happen? When did you switch to the light side of the force?
I dipped my toe in about 5 years ago. I went through my agent with one book.
Yeah. And
got frustrated that I couldn't change prices and stuff like that. So then I wrote Blood Kiss, the first of the Lizzie Grace series, and that was my first full step into self-publishing.
Oh, nice.
And I really enjoyed the process, even though it was a massive learning curve for me, coming from the traditional side. And then, of course, a year or so later, I lost both my contracts. My traditional contracts.
Oh, wow.
Well, I basically had no choice but to self-publish.
Yeah.
So it was jumping in full body and going straight at it.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of cool then. That's kind of why, right? Like you want to have toes in all the different pieces of water, because you never know what's going to come up and what's going to happen.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, I didn't think I'd lose it. I knew, the advances and that would go down, but I thought I had enough of a following to keep getting traditional contracts. And ideally I would have liked to have been a hybrid author, but that wasn't to be.
Yeah. So. Okay. What are the main differences between self-publishing and traditional publishing then for you, like who's seen both sides?
Well, self-publishing, you basically have to do it all yourself. You've got to arrange your editors, you've got to arrange your copy editors, you've got to arrange your covers, you've got to arrange proofers, and everything is you. And from someone who came from the traditional side where all that was done for you, it was, whoa, how am I going to cope with this? So,
yeah. Did you find that you've become a control freak now and you can't bear the idea of someone else deciding on your cover, or is that just me?
Yeah. But when it comes to covers, I love the control of just getting what you want on the cover, and I love all my self-published covers. So, and I've got a stack of them hidden away too, that I bought with no story attached, but I just love the cover and thought, got to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. And because there's a lot of people out there who think, oh, I don't want to be self-published. I just want to go traditional because the traditional publishers will do everything for me.
Yeah.
And kind of what you're saying is that they'll do some of it, but do they do everything like people think, or is it? Did you still have to do stuff from your?
Well, these days you do have to do more in the marketing, and it does depend on the publisher too. Like the big five will do basically everything, although these days they are putting more of the marketing stuff onto the authors. But a lot of the small presses, you have to do, I mean, they still do your editing and proofing and that. But, you know, with the small press, you've got more say in your covers. They'll ask for opinions and stuff like that. But, yeah, basically, you've got all the control as a self-published author.
Yeah.
And all the stress as well.
Yeah, right. So, this is an interesting question. Do you think, did you earn more money as a traditionally published author or as self-published? Is that a hard question?
I earned really good money in my trad career. I mean, with imagine the small press I was with initially, I didn't earn heaps, but I did reasonably well considering it was in the 2000s and Kindle and all them weren't around at the time. So I was getting a couple of grand a month, which is pretty good for that time. Yeah. But my trade career, I mean, my first contract was $120,000 a book.
Wow. Okay.
So, you know, that's really good money. Yeah. But because of my trade career, I've got the advantage over a lot of self-published authors. I've got the following. So I'm still earning good money in my self-published career because I've had the long trad career and I've got the readers behind me. Yeah,
and you know, and they know you, who you are and where you're from.
They know my brand. They know what to expect when I release a book. And, you know, I do all the editing and the copy editing, the proofing and everything like that. So, so they know what to expect. Yeah. It's still you. It's still the same book. Do you think all readers even notice? Like, that's what I'm curious about. Do you think they even know that these books that are coming out from you are different to the ones that they always used to enjoy from? Probably not. I mean, those who are on my readers group page and that know I'm self-publishing now, but if someone's just came straight in and found my books and haven't known my past books, they probably wouldn't notice the difference. Yeah.
Because it's the same quality. It's the same person. You're the same.
Yeah. That's what I aim for, the same quality. So
yeah, absolutely. So, okay, this is a hard question. Would you go back to being traditionally published if someone came to you with a contract?
If they offered me tons and tons and tons of money, probably, but I wouldn't give up all rights. And a lot of the publishers these days, when they come to successfully authors, they're asking for multiple rights, and I wouldn't do that. I mean, I make good money e-publishing. If they wanted the print rights, fine. If they wanted the audio rights, fine. But no, the rest I'll keep. Yeah, that's interesting. It's changed. Everything has sort of moved in a different way now. It's not the same as it was in the 2000s when you started publishing. It's a different environment. It's totally different, and it's good that the authors now have that option. You know, if they want to go traditional, they can. But if they don't want to, if they want to control it all themselves, the market's there and the means is there, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad you said that. So, if you've got a new author who's starting out in their career, what advice would you give them in terms of trad versus self-publishing? Or is it just too?
Well, it's decide what you want in your career. You've got to remember trad publishers, US trad publishers expect 2 books a year, and that's all you'll probably get. Australia's 1 book a year, maybe.
Oh, wow.
So in Australia, you generally won't be able to live off your writing earnings. The US you can if you get a good enough deal, but these days the good enough deals are really hard to find. But by the same token, self-publishing, it's a long haul game. You know, you can't release 1 or 2 or 3 books and think you're going to make a ton of money. You've got to be in it for 5, 6, 7, 8 books these days, 3 or 4 years before you start making very good money. So you've got to look at it long term. Either way, you've got to look at it long term. Yeah. Yeah.
Either way, it's not an easy choice, right?
It's not an easy choice, you know, and there's nothing wrong with doing one or the other. It's just where you personally feel comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, whether you don't particularly want all the hassle of, you know, having to arrange the copy editing and the editing and the proofing, and you just want to pass it all off onto the editor, that's fine. But if you're a control freak, or you just want to write your own stuff and put it out there, then self-publishing is a good option too. So just decide where you want to sit and where you want to go, and just aim for that. And remember, either way, it's a long game.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Thank you. So you write urban fantasy, or you started out in paranormal romance? Is that kind of
I started out in paranormal romance, and then I sort of veered towards urban. If you read my paranormal romances, they tend to have a lot of the urban fantasy elements anyway. So I just naturally veered towards the urban fantasy, because I love series. So
you love writing in series. So we'll talk
I
about that
love
in a
writing
minute.
in series.
So in your definition, what is the difference between paranormal romance and urban fantasy?
Paranormal romance it follows the convention of ordinary romances. The romance is front and center. It's the main plot line. Whereas urban fantasy, the romance is a secondary plot line. It's the action and that's the main plot. Bad guys, finding bad guys, kicking the bad guys, that's the main plot in an urban fantasy.
Does it have to be in an urban setting?
Doesn't.
No.
My Lizzie Grace series is set in a country town.
Yeah.
So it's just a modern day setting, whether that's country or main city, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's just a modern setting.
I've heard it called contemporary fantasy, and in some ways I feel like that would be a more accurate description, but urban fantasy sounds cooler. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's it's a long name. It's a name that's been around for a long time, whereas contemporary fantasy, I think a lot of people would think more of the contemporary elements like dragons and stuff like that, whereas urban fantasy tend not to have a lot of dragons and the more traditional fantasy elements.
Okay, that makes sense. And so when you're writing these books, what is it do you think draws people into your books? How do you make sure that your readers are going to love your books?
It's all about characters.
Yeah.
No matter what book you're writing, no matter what genre you're writing, you've got to write characters that your readers love.
Yeah.
If they don't like your main character, and for me it's more important they like it because I write in first person.
Yeah.
So if they don't like my main character, I'm in deep trouble. They won't read the book. But you've just got to create characters that they love, that they'll follow through the journey. In my case, through multiple books.
Yeah. So how do you make sure that? Like, how do you create a character that people are going to love? Is it about giving them quirks?
They can't be perfect.
Yeah.
They've got to have the good points. They've got to have the bad points. They've got to be human, even if they're not.
They've got to be real. Yeah. No, that's perfect. And so, what do you think about the urban fantasy as a genre these days? Like, where is it at, and has it changed over the last few years, or is it just the same as it's?
It always comes through, like vampires a few years ago, you couldn't sell a vampire to save your life. But now vampires are starting to come back.
Yeah.
Werewolves have always been popular. Witches are very, very popular at the moment. So just urban fantasy as a genre, you can do anything, basically. And the readers are out there for it if you're self-published.
Yeah.
It's harder to sell to traditional publishers at the moment. They're just not looking. According to them, urban fantasy doesn't sell.
Okay.
Which, if you go to the self-publishing model, hell yeah, it sells.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, it's like that with lots of different genres in self-publishing, where the traditional publishers are saying, oh, no, we can't sell it. And then you go check out the self-publishing market and they're all there. Yeah, they're all being sold and the readers are there for it. Yeah. So what do you have a newsletter? You mentioned a readers group before. Like, what do you do to kind of connect with your readers?
I've got a couple of Facebook pages and Twitter. My readers group, Keri Arthur's readers group. At the moment, I'm giving away a book a week.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that drags in readers, and we talk about books and my readers have conversations about books and different characters, and it's a good way of interacting with your reader base.
Yeah. Are they very interactive? Like they'll post things, or
they'll post things and stuff like that. So so it's really good.
Yeah.
It's just a good way of. A group is a good way of interacting. The pages these days, the way Facebook has changed the algorithms, pages aren't working as well as groups at the moment. So it's always good to set up a group just to interact with your readers.
Yeah, because pages tend to almost be one-dimensional, whereas the group is a little bit more options around. And
well, the pages too, I mean, because of Facebook's algorithms, you know, you may get 1 or 2% of people seeing. Like on my page, I've got 27,000 people.
Wow. Okay.
Who have liked my page. 1% of those people see my posts.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Whereas in my group, which I'm just building, I've only had it for a year and a half, I think. There's 1,800 or something people on there. Most of the people in that group will see the posts. Yeah. So that's you know, a huge difference.
Yeah. 1,800 in a group is pretty good.
Well, yeah.
When I compare it to other groups that I'm in for, you know, with this, it's nothing to be sneezed at. You sounded like you were trying to say that it wasn't very much.
No. I know, but it's slowly building. That's the thing, and you know, that's what you've got to do.
Yeah,
slowly build these things.
Yeah, exactly. And are you KU or wide?
Wide.
Wide. Okay. Yeah. Would you ever consider KU?
I'm not a huge fan of KU.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people make good money in it, but I just don't like the way Amazon treats authors and the way they don't hit down on scammers in KU. There are a ton of scammers in KU, and it's affecting the earnings of the majority of the people in there. I mean, people do make good money in KU, but it's just... go wide.
Go wide.
Personally.
And you can do cool things like give away a book a week, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
And are you when you say you give away a book a week, are you doing it to drive sales or just to be kind to your readers, or
just to be kind? I started it when the whole COVID thing started.
Okay.
Just, you know, just something to give back to readers. And I'll just keep doing it probably till the end of the year at this stage. Because it's most of my readers are in the US, and the US is in a bad way at the moment. So I just thought, just do something to give back to the readers.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really lovely. So anyone listening, go and join Keri's group, add to the 1,800 and get some free books. Awesome. Yeah. And so do you do advertising? What advertising do you do?
I'm really bad at advertising. I know I should do more about it, and I've joined up on various courses that I haven't yet done. Yeah. I've got a newsletter, and that's about it. Okay.
Is your newsletter with similar numbers to your Facebook page or group?
I think there's 7,000.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Subscribers.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm really bad at advertising. I should do it more, but
it's not. Well, I mean, if what you've got is working, like you're still getting a decent income from what you've got, then you know. Although I don't like to mention this, but you know, imagine what it could be if you.
Oh I know.
Better.
I look at all the things you have to learn with the whole advertising thing, and I think, I can't be bothered.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of good for us to see someone who's doing really well without that. So, yay. Because
but again, it comes back. I'm doing well because I've got the past readership. You know, if I didn't have that past readership, then I'd be in trouble. I would have to advertise.
Yeah. So that's cool. Do you do any like the newsletter promos? Have you tried for a BookBub or not even?
Well, I haven't tried for a BookBub. I do Kobo promos. I scan through and do a couple of those a year. Just depends what it is. But that's about it, really.
Yeah.
Amazon regularly send me promo stuff, deal of the day and stuff like that. I will do those.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's about it, really.
So, do you have any tips in terms of how you do anything special on the different platforms like Kobo and Barnes and Noble or Apple Books? I forget what it's called these days.
No, I've done a few deals on Apple Books, but they're really hard to get. Apple's basically got to come to you. Yeah, no, I don't treat any of the platforms any different. I've just got all the links everywhere, you know, on my website, in my book, in my newsletter and stuff like that. In the back of my ebooks, I've got all the links there. That's it. I'm really bad to ask about advertising and stuff like that because I don't know.
Right, I'll move on. So what about, and how does it work in terms of, you've got your traditionally published books that are still out? Do they put links for you in the back to things like your newsletter, or no?
No. According to the traditional publishers, it's too hard to do. You know, it takes all 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 seconds, rather.
No.
But yeah, no. Apparently it's too hard to do that.
Okay.
Traditional publishers.
Okay. So you've got it all in the back of your self-published books.
Published books, yeah. All the direct links. And it's, you know, with Vellum, love Vellum. It's you know, it doesn't take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about that. Like, so what was the hardest thing that you found when you switched to self-publishing? You said there was a really steep learning curve. So things like figuring out Vellum, was that hard or easy? Or?
Vellum was relatively easy. The hardest thing was learning all the platforms, how to load books up onto all the platforms.
Yeah.
Apple drove me insane.
Yeah.
You know, now that I understand how it works, it's really easy to use. But the iBooks platform initially, it took a lot of cursing and swearing and, you know, and having to fill in the various tax forms. You know, you can't use the same tax form for each of the ones. You've got to do a different one for all of them. And it was all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The technical stuff.
Yeah, just that introduction bit, you know, when you first start out. And was Draft to Digital around when you first started, or you decided to not?
Yeah, they were really easy. Draft to Digital is really easy to use. If you don't mind losing an extra 10%, then, you know, just put it all onto Draft to Digital and go from there. But at the time, the Draft to Digital was the only way you could load it onto Nook if you're outside America. Yeah. So that's what I did it. So I still use them for Nook and all the other smaller library places and stuff like that. So,
Okay. What else? What were the other? I'm just curious. It's been a while now since I first started. And what other things were kind of difficult or easy or different?
Finding editors and copy editors. That was really hard. Just finding those editors that I was comfortable with and who knew my genre and stuff like that. That took a while. Searching around for good cover artists. I mean, that was great fun, but it took a lot of time to find, you know, the cover artists I was happy with.
What would you recommend to do that? How did you did you just search around?
I just searched around. Facebook has a couple of pages now, groups that actually where the cover artists go on and show their wares. I can't remember them, but I can send you the links. You can put it under. And we'll put the links in the show notes. They've got, you know, like 100 different cover artists who go on these pages and show you, you know, their latest covers and pre-mades and stuff like that. And that's actually how I found 3 of my cover artists. Really, really good. So no, that's cool. The easiest way.
So what about covers in urban fantasy? I'm really curious about that. Like, so you obviously are steeped in the knowledge of the urban fantasy genre. What do you think is sort of the elements of a cover for urban fantasy that maybe...
The urban fantasy is the kick-ass chick, basically. Paranormal romance, you usually have couples, kick-ass couples. But in urban fantasy, it's the chick on the cover, leather jeans, singlets, weapon, looking fierce, magic, or, you know, whatever.
No, that's it, exactly. Awesome. Good. I'm glad that describes my cover, I think. So what about, like, I'm switching all over the place here, but let's go back to the newsletter. So how often do you send it, and what kind of content are you sending them, and how do you run it?
The what? Sorry, the newsletter. The
newsletter. Sorry.
Oh yeah. I'm really bad at the newsletter too. I send it when I've got something.
I'm sure you're not.
Well, I don't send it as often probably as I should. I send it every couple of months. So when I've got a new cover or a pre-order goes up, or, you know, there's a release I've got a release coming out Tuesday, so I'll probably send a newsletter out this weekend just to remind people. But usually if I've got something to say, I'll send it out. If I haven't, I won't. Okay. So it's, you know, it could be every 2 months or so when I send the newsletter out.
Is that how often you're publishing at the moment, every 2 months?
No, I'm publishing every 3 months. 3.5. I put out 3 books a year.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's comfortable for me.
Yeah.
So.
And so can you talk to me through a little bit of your processes then? I'd love to find out. So how long it takes you to write the draft, and is it, you know, what are you doing? I
write 5 days a week, roughly somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200 words a day. I write every afternoon because I've got to take the dog for a walk in the morning, otherwise he'll eat the house.
It's important not to have the dog eat the house.
Oh yeah, it is. He's a big dog, so you know. So I write every afternoon, and I do, you know, stuff like editing or, you know, copy editing or whatever in the weekend, or I'll use the weekends to catch up if I'm behind. I usually get a book done every 3 months.
Yeah.
So then I'll go run through it myself, do an edit then, and then I'll send it off to my, you know, editor and copy editor and everything after that.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I said, I'm comfortably writing 3 books a year. Like I could do 4, but it's just too much stress. I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
There's a theme running through everything here.
But you've got a 48 book backlist here as well. Like, yes. I can't remember if we talked about this, but how many of those are self-published and how many are trade published?
I think something or 36 or something like that. I have to go back and count, but mid-30s is traditional.
Yeah, and so do they just sort of spin along in the background and they
just trundle along. I will never get those rights back. The Riley Jenson series, the first 5 are now earned out, but the other 4 haven't, and I don't know if they will because the market's shifted at the moment. So, but that's all right. I've got a lot of money for them, so I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah. Do you? You're not allowed to write in that series anymore, are you? Obviously.
No. Well, if I wrote in those series, I'd have to give the publisher first option to buy.
Okay. Yeah.
That's in the contract. So
yeah. Would you consider going back?
Well,
do you miss her? Do you miss Riley?
I do, but I mean, I ended the series. The publisher did not want me to end that series. They were actually pressing me to do more books, but it got to the stage with the 9th book. I thought, I can't take this anywhere else without just stretching it for the sake of stretching it. You know, the 9th book had the logical end, and for me, I'd rather end a series logically at a good point, without, you know, just writing for the sake of writing and have readers fall away with disinterest.
Yeah. So, end on a high note, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like when a television series ends on a high note, it's much better than...
Yeah, you always want more, but it's better to end on a high rather than a low and just drag it out.
Okay. And so talking about that, we talked a little bit before we came on air about series and what you do. I think it was before we came on air anyway.
Yes, yeah.
And you, because I said to you, I'm terrible at series and remembering what I've written previously, and you gave me some really good advice. What was that?
To copy and paste. What I do is I have, basically 3 files open. I've got my book file, and then I've got a world building file, and then I've got a character file. So every time I write something in my story that's either world building based or character based, I just copy and paste.
Nice.
So it's all in the one file. Instead of having to read back 4 or 5 books to find that nugget of information I know is there somewhere, I've only got to have to go to the world building file or the character file, and it's all there. So maybe a bit messy, but at least I've only got to go through, 3 or 4 pages rather than 3 or 4 books.
So do you keep that same like character file for the main character, and then when you go to the next book, you have that same file open? And same information, so you keep it running.
If it's a 7-book series or 8-book series, it's the one file for the entire series.
Yeah. Okay.
So, if I add something in book 6 to, one of the characters from book 1, I'll put it in the file so that it's there for the next book so I don't forget.
Yeah. It's all about the forgetting. I don't know why, but it all just...
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. This is why I do this. Because I've got so many series that I do get characters mixed up occasionally, so I have to go back and think, no, that character didn't do that, and then I have to go to my files and check what I've written. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you're scaring me. I've got like 2 main characters, and it's bad enough with 2 of them, let alone more. Oh.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start doing that from now on. Awesome, thank you for that. So is there any other pieces of advice around writing in series that you would give someone? Like, should you write a certain number of books before you publish anything? I mean, so you know what's going to happen and you can make sure that there's nuggets in book 1 is kind of what I'm thinking. But
well, I'm a pantser, so I'm really bad to ask.
Oh no, you're one of them.
Oh. One of them, yes. All my series have been pantsed.
Wow. Okay. So tell us about pantsing. Let me hear.
Well, pantsing, you've got to be prepared to go off on tangents, realise it's not working, and come back. I've gotten better at it because I've got so many books behind me. So, I've sort of fallen into a reasonable pattern of writing. But yeah, it's fun. I love it.
Oh, you're giving me the...
No, half the fun of writing for me is not knowing where the story's going.
Yeah. Do you have any idea? Like when you start, you kind of go, do you start with a character, or how do you start?
I start with a character and a situation. And I generally know how the series is going to end. I might not know how many books it is, or anything like that, but I always know. Like for the Riley Jenson series, I knew how that series was going to end and who she was going to end up with from the very beginning. Yeah, it was just the journey to get there that I had no clue about. So if you're a pantser, you've just got to
go with the
trust your instinct, write the book, and then go back and edit.
It's the going back, right? So do you still kind of know, okay, I've got to do a black moment, or I know that at a certain point something wants to happen, or do you just write it out and then it's the editing process that is the...
I write it out, but I'm always conscious of, for a start, ending chapters with a hook. So, if I think a chapter's going too long, I'll go back and look, well, where's the logical hook of this chapter? And then I'll end it and start on. So I always end it, or try to end a chapter with a hook. And I'm always conscious of the rise and fall. So if you have an action scene, you've got to have an after action scene where the characters can take a breath. And it's sort of, it's a natural rhythm you get into once you've written a few books. Yeah, but you've just... I am conscious of where and aware of, the flow of the story. And if I think it's going too long, then I'll go back and either delete or change direction or stuff like that.
How do you differentiate from the overall arc of the series and then the arc in a story? Do you know the... So you only kind of know...
I don't always know the overall arc. Like the Riley Jenson series, the first 3 books had an arc, and then it was sort of individual. Each book was an individual story over the overall arc was just her search for her soulmate, basically. And
I think there's some birds being killed outside your window.
No, that's my magpies waiting for their breakfast.
Oh, that's so cute. So
they're actually standing at my window, staring in at my window, singing at me.
And you feed them? Magpies. Oh my God. Do you feed them every day like that?
Every day, yes. They get mince every day.
Oh, nice. They'll be happy. No wonder they're there waiting for you. They're like, what is she doing? Mucking around. Sorry, magpies, I've got it for a bit longer. Sorry there. Sorry, now I'm completely distracted. I have no idea what I was talking about. So what else okay, so you're pantsing away. So I want to tell you that Wendy is a pantser, one of the other spa girls, and she would have been happy to be here. Unfortunately, they couldn't get on, and you and her could have bonded over that. Whereas I'm a total plotter. So I like
See, if I've tried to plot, and it's killed the story for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Once I know where it's going.
Yeah.
Then, well, the story's told. Why do I need to tell this story?
Yeah, isn't that funny? Whereas I get blocked if I don't. Yeah. Anyway, so okay.
Well, if I get blocked, I kill someone. Basically.
Oh, I like it.
Not always kill, but you know what I do. If I get blocked, I either do murder someone in the book, or I look at the worst possible thing that can happen for these characters at that point of time and do that.
Oh, that's such good advice. And yet so scary, right? Like you're riding along and suddenly you know what would be really bad if they all, no. They all blown up by a nuclear no, that would be bad. Don't do that. So what are the elements that you have to have in urban fantasy, say? Like, so we've got the kick-ass heroine. What else do we need?
Well, it's such a wide field that you can basically have anything you want. You generally got to have your supernatural creatures. They're expected. Whether that's a hero or the bad guy or what. You've generally also got to have a lot of action.
Have you studied fight scenes? Are you like a karate expert?
No, I'm not a karate, but I do watch a lot of action movies.
Okay.
Yes. And I get around the whole action thing by having my heroines not professional fighters or anything like that. So, but I've got books on fighting and trauma. I've got some really good trauma books and stuff like that. And,
my goodness.
My books can get a bit gory at times.
Yeah.
Do
you think that's expected in UF, the gore? Like, or
dark urban fantasy is dark. And they do expect, particularly in the dark urban fantasy, gore, horror elements. That's why it's called the dark urban, because
would you call your books dark urban or just?
A lot of my books are dark urban. Yes. Yeah. Okay. My Lizzie Grace is urban fantasy because there's gore there, but it's a lot lighter in tone than, say, the Lizzie Grace series and Riley Jenson series, which was dark urban fantasy because it got pretty grim in places.
Okay. So that's interesting. Because there are the different, like, and there's in urban fantasy, there's also the guy heroine versus the female heroine. You get like the Shane Silvers and Jim Butcher and those kind of ones.
Yeah. My magpies are now knocking on the window.
That's all right. We're finishing soon, magpies. Oh my God.
Just ignore them. They have to learn politeness.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, we're lucky that my dog isn't like banging at the cat door or something like that. So, animals everywhere around here. So it's there's that kind of definition between the men and the male and the female urban fantasy. But there's also like the dark and the more the lighter version. Yeah. There's a lot of snarky heroines, would you say? Is that kind of?
Yeah, there is. Snarkiness can be a trait in the urban fantasy. I prefer my heroines to be a bit more likable. Okay. I mean, they can be snarky, but they've got reasons to be snarky. So
okay, so that's
but and I also like a bit of humour in stories, just to give a bit of light and shade between the darkness of the story and the action, but to just give a bit of relief to the story.
No, that's cool. And so do you do other things? Like, do you have a community of authors that you spend time with, or other?
Yeah, I have a critique group. We've been together for years. 20 odd years.
Oh wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
So are you all Australian authors in your area?
Yes, all Australian authors. We meet once a month face to face. Well, we can't at the moment. Unfortunately, we're meeting online at the moment. Yeah. So I've got that, and then I've got a couple of other groups members with, and we get together when we can. Once or twice a month. And just chat about the business and stuff like that. I think it's very important because writing is in itself such a lonely business. You're stuck in your room in front of a computer all day. I think you need the contact with other writers. I think it's very, very important. And particularly, you know, a smaller group of writers that you can trust to talk about your story and your problems you're having with it, and, you know, work things out and help each other on the journey. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
Totally. No, that's very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Okay. And so do you sell most of your books in the US, would you say? Like, what's the Australian market like for...
I've got a good Australian following, but most of my earnings does come from the US. I mean, Amazon's my biggest market by far. 70% of my earnings.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm trying to work on the other 30%. It'd be nice if the other 30% were, you know, started creeping up. But
do you do much in the way of print sales, or is it mostly ebooks?
Oh, no, the majority, I would say 80% is ebook.
Yeah.
But I still got, like, I'm earning a couple of thousand a month on print sales.
Wow, that's good.
So, and again, that comes from my trad.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my trad readers are print readers.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, I do sell a lot of print books because of that.
That's an interesting kind of output from having that trad to self-publishing kind of background. It's like you get those readers that maybe someone who'd started out as a self-publisher wouldn't be able to find them almost. I don't know.
Again, that comes the advantage of having a trad career, you know, that I pull my readers through in the print, because you know, they used to be able to walk into a bookstore and get my books. Now they have to go online to get my books, but they're still preferring the print. Although a lot of them will buy the ebook as well, which is interesting.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that there's the so you've got these traditional, so there's two different markets almost, like you, it really is, there are different people buying these traditional books in the bookstores at the, that is fascinating, isn't it?
That's why I recommend to new authors that they always have the option of the print there. You know, you may not make a lot of sales, but you are missing out on readers if you don't have the option there.
And it's not that much harder to
no. I mean, there's Ingrams. Just put it up on Ingrams, and there's, you know, it'll go worldwide, and there's always codes to get around the Ingrams fees. So it's not hard work to do.
It doesn't add in, and then it's there, and you've got it, and it's And are you in libraries as well, like through Ingram?
Oh yeah, I am.
So that's awesome. Now, I think I've asked you all the very nosy questions I had for you today, but just in terms of just a general kind of piece of advice for authors out there, thinking either urban fantasy or just general authors, what would you say is the most important thing about self-publishing? Or
taking your time and enjoying what you're writing. Don't be in a rush to get published. Remember, quality will sell over volume every time. Just enjoy what you write. Don't follow market trends, because, you know, by the time you get your book out, the market trend might be gone. Just love what you write. I've been in this business now for 20 years. I've never followed market trends. I've always written whatever the hell I want. And sometimes it sold. In the early days, it didn't sell. But in the in the mid-2000s, when I sold the Riley Jenson series, the publishers weren't looking for that type of story because it was so cross-genre. But the reason I had 3 publishers vying for that book was because there was nothing else out there like it at the time. You know, it was a total mix of everything. So that's the reason why I got an auction, because, you know, it was different. Just write what you love, even if, you know, there's no market, so-called market for it at the time. You know, you will find readers. And if you want a long-term career in this business, you've got to write what you love. It's the only way to survive.
That is good advice. If you want to survive, if you want to do long term, you've got to love it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got to love what you're doing.
Because, you know, with this business, there will come times when it feels like you're falling down a cliff.
Gosh, we're painting such a wonderful picture of writing at the moment.
I love what I do. But, you know, it's just sometimes you think, oh, my God, what have I done? You know, there have been times that have been very stressful. I mean, when I first lost my contract, because I've lost contracts a number of times, but the first time it happened was when I think Bantam, Random House Bantam, got merged into another Valentine, I think it was, and they got rid of something like 400 authors.
Wow.
And I lost my contracts then, and it was a few months of stress trying to get another publisher.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I mean, self-publishing wasn't really an option when that happened. So, and then it all happened again when Penguin and Random House merged and NAL went under. And I was shoved over to Berkeley, I think it was, who really couldn't handle dark urban fantasy. And I lost my contract again. You've got to expect the ups and downs. You've got to be tenacious in this business.
Yeah, tenacious. That's such a great word. I think that's an amazing way to look at it, because even self-publishing, you have to be tenacious. You can't be someone who kind of gives up at the first hurdle, because there are lots of hurdles. And I think anywhere you look in writing, there are hurdles. From writing the book to publishing the book to marketing it.
And for self-publishing, it's finding the readers. You've just got to keep trying. You've got to hit the marketing and keep putting out books, and looking at the covers, trying to get the right covers for your genre, and if one cover's not working, try another. And it's just keep going, don't give up. Because you will succeed in the end, but you've just got to keep going. That's awesome. That's awesome advice, and I think that's a fantastic place to end. So if someone wants to go and read one of your books, what's the best place to find you, Keri? Probably on my website. It lists all the books. So www.keriarthur.com.
And that's Keri spelled Keri. And Arthur.com. Awesome. And we can be found, the Spa Girls, on www.spargirlspodcast.com. We're also on Facebook. We're probably on Twitter. I don't normally go on Twitter, so I don't know. No, we are. We are on Twitter. I do know. I just don't go there. And we would love you to come and find us on Facebook and say hi and tell us about the podcast or what you want to hear about, anything like that. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Keri, for coming on. I've really enjoyed it. I like chatting to other authors in my genre particularly. And we will be back again next week with another podcast. But in the meantime, thank you all for listening, and fare thee well. Bye.
Bye.